This is episode 10, part 1, recorded on May 4th, 2021. My guest today is Rabbi Marc Labowitz, the spiritual leader of Temple Adat Or of Weston, Florida. His deepest spiritual practice is to foster a world in which freedom, acceptance, and love are the essence of all paths. In part 1 of this podcast, we discuss how Rabbi Marc actively engages with people from all faiths, not just the Jewish community, but humanity in all its wonderful colors, shapes, and sizes, including African Americans, Hispanics, Jews. Quite beautiful. We learn how and why he's able to do this. It's not easy, but he's brilliant at it. It's Not What You Think podcast is available on all streaming platforms, so please like, comment, share, or subscribe on your favorite platform. That support is enough to continue to allow us to produce this show. Our interviews are with people who may have opinions different from yours or mine, so while we keep an open mind, just remember, it's not what you think. Welcome, Rabbi Marc Labowitz, to It's Not What You Think. That's it. That's the whole start. That's the whole thing. As I mentioned, we do the introduction beforehand, so I have a long list of your accolades. So thanks for being on the show. I'm very excited that you're here. How was your week?
It's been wonderful. It's been everyone's healthy, thank God, and those who are not are getting the help that they need.
Right. So we've known each other now for about 15, 20 years or so. And of course, I've known your parents for, I think, about 300 years.
We've known each other for a lot longer. I haven't seen you for 20 years, but
okay.
You stayed at our house. Do you remember when you stayed at our house?
No, you're right.
And you would stay, you'd pick these weeks in the middle of the summer when it rained every single day. I felt so bad. I said, Mordy, here he comes to be at the beach. And the poor guy's stuck in my mother's Florida room. And Florida room back then meant that we did the wallpaper in flowers. That was it. That was a Florida room back then.
Well, what was interesting, what I remember about that trip, I think I was about 25, you're 25, 28, something like that. You're right. And maybe plus or minus a few years. And I was there because I was training to do a triathlon. Yeah. And back then,
yes,
there were that was like people were training to do a what? No concept of that.
You thought you were crazy, yes.
And I remember going out running, and I go out running with your dad, who, I'm thinking, okay, guy's a rabbi. I mean, my father's a rabbi too, of course. Yeah, it's not going to be a problem. And he ran me into the ground. And he was carrying these like 10-pound weights in each arm. And I go out running. I'm in shape theoretically for this track. The guy ran me into the ground. I'm thinking like, wow.
Yes. Yeah, I run cross country, and I'd run with him too. He would run me into the ground too. And I think he was inspired. And I don't think that the triathletes were such a surprise to us, because my uncle, Peter Kellner, who is a marathon runner, would come be with us all the time. He's living here now, actually. He moved down here.
Wow.
Ultimately, all triathletes retire in Florida or California.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You're right. We did meet back then. So we are second cousins. Our mothers were first cousins. That's how that works for people that are wondering. And then our children are third cousins. And just to go one step further, me and your daughter are second cousins once removed. There we go. Now we've solved that problem for all of humanity. So, and of course, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are also named after the same person. Your great-grandfather, Rabbi Mordechai Rabinovich of Baltimore. I don't know why they say of Baltimore, because he was really from, I guess, Germany or Poland, but of Baltimore. And from what I know about his life, he risked his life smuggling Jews out of the Holocaust. Right. Now, of course, everyone's got a different version, but is that your understanding as well?
Yes, he was really a tzaddik. When I refer to him as the Pimlico Rebbe. He was he, according to family legend, wherever he was, not only was he a savior of so many neshamot back then, but he would also hold a book. And he was the kind of guy that you would see at a gathering or an event or a party that would be sitting in the corner, reading a sefer, reading a holy book. And that's what I remember. And I was this close. I remember you and I talked about this once. I was this close to also being named Mordy.
Really?
Yes, very, very close. But I think my parents, they went in a different direction.
Right. Right. And my son's middle name is Mark, but that's another story. So in doing my research for the show, I'm struck by a number of things. And I know we chatted the other day, and that was before I did my research, how actively you engaged you are with all aspects of the community.
Yeah.
And not just the Jewish community, which is really where I think most rabbis spend their time, which is wonderful, but humanity in all of its wonderful colors and sizes. You go to your Facebook page, there's African Americans, Hispanics, Jews. It's quite beautiful. So that was the first thing that struck me. The second thing is you're actively engaged. I said that before, but you really are. You're active. It's not just talk. It's just not write a couple of sentences. I posted this. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But, and the third thing is your engagement is all about improving and bettering humanity. So I just wanted to put that out there that I'm very inspired by that.
Thank you. I was inspired by, firstly, I'm inspired by you as well, Mordy. Everything you've done, really, what you've done for the what we call l'chad damya tehillah, what you've done for prayer as silence and meditation and stillness is remarkable. And that's work that I also deeply respect. And we'll talk, I'm sure, about that a little bit more later.
Right.
In terms of the work that I'm doing in the community, the psalmist writes, and I'll sing it because I'm no Pavarotti, but I'm surely not ashamed of embarrassing myself every once in a while. So I wrote I write liturgical music, and this is a piece that I wrote with my wife, and it comes from the Psalms. I believe it's Psalm 34, 33, forgive me. Hayotze yachad libom, hamevin el kol maasehem, It means, God, you have fashioned everyone from the same form. Everyone is fashioned from the same form. And when we understand this, there's nothing else we need to understand in the world. Like, that's it. When you get this, you understand everything, right?
Yeah.
And so, my best friend is actually an African American man named. I have many best friends, but he's certainly really up there. Maui Goodbeer. He actually teaches swimming and surfing to inner city youth because his brother passed away, and he made a promise at his brother's funeral that he would do his best to bring the awareness of swimming in to many of the inner city youth who unfortunately don't have that capability,
right.
To their own detriment. So, when my brother Pierre Doniegro, he's also of African descent. He actually comes from the Ivory Coast of Africa. My mother adopted him. So for me to have around me and us as a family, a diverse group of people from all backgrounds is not chidush. It's not a new thing.
Right.
It's a novelty for us. As you know, you even probably in your time with us, you saw people of many faiths, and colors,
right,
and shapes and sizes. So that's something that we firmly believe in. So when many of these modern movements emerged, we were already on that train and doing our best to support it in all the ways that we could. I remember I was very proud of a program that we did this year where I had a chief of police, Chief Ron Gotlin, and Maui and other members of the community of color speak with the chief of police in a way that was really very frank and forthcoming and honest, and they both dialogued in a way that was inspiring to everyone. Mm-hmm. And this was at a moment when it was a very, very difficult time for the police force and for people of color to even get into the same room together, let alone have a conversation. So that I think I saved that on the Facebook page, and it's worth looking at.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, your Facebook page is just wonderful. A lot of treasures there. You reminded me of in the 60s, I grew up in Brooklyn in a Jewish, Italian, Irish neighborhood. Yay, Brooklyn. People think Israel's the promised land. It's really Brooklyn, but that's another story.
Borough Park.
Borough Park, right. And my father, as you know, rabbi of conservative congregation, and he had invited in every year, once or twice a year, African American Jews that were practicing somewhere else in Brooklyn, and he'd bring them in. And some members of the congregation would love that, and of course others didn't. But also back in the 60s, the Jewish community was a large part of the Jewish community was on the forefront of civil rights, things like that. So, walked hand in hand with Martin Luther King and others. So yeah, no, it's great. It's wonderful to see that, especially in today's times. So do you meditate? I know, or do you still meditate, or do you regard your prayer as meditation?
It's a good question. I'm sure that you read in the background that I spent at least a couple of years in Kripalu.
Right.
I was a devotee of Gurudev, Yogi Amar Desai. And it was there that my meditative awakening had occurred. And yet I brought that back to Yiddishkeit, to Judaism. I read Aryeh Kaplan's Jewish meditation. I studied for 10 years. I lived at the feet of my Rebbe, Rabbi Michal Shapiro, who is, he's well practiced in the art of Jewish meditation in general. And at some point, I remember him telling me, he said, Mark, my prayer has lost its vocabulary. He didn't say it like that. I made it more romantic than the guy. But he said, Mark, I don't use words. The lashon is no longer there for me. And he said that my prayer has become silent. And that really impacted me deeply. And much of what I do, even sometimes in the narcotic way that I speak, I do my best to bring, a meditative element. Yet I brought meditation into what we call Birchot HaShachar, which is the prayers for awakening. There are a series of prayers that we recite in the morning, and I made them a part of a meditation program that is very empowering. So it's the recitation of the prayer, but the internalization of the meaning of the prayer. Mm-hmm. It's not just by rote reading what it says in the prayer book, but extrapolating from each prayer what the essence, and not only the essence, but the task oriented with the prayer is, so that people feel a sense of focus. And I remember I was also speaking with the dean of the rabbinic program that I received my smicha from. Her name is Rabbi Marcia Prager. And she said to me that Buddhist meditation, or many meditations, not just Buddhist, but many meditations, are a meditation on nothingness. It's you clear out. There's a clearing. She said Jews are not satisfied with that. She said it was so funny. She said that Jews, our meditation is anticipatory. We're waiting for something. We're like, what's going on here? What's happening? We're like, we look at the clock in our mind and we're waiting for something. So just in jest, the Jewish meditation is a clearing, but an opening for the divine presence to fill. And, we say, Yemecha Amole, we believe that every day is a vessel that can be filled divinely. And I'll tell you one Torah. I know I'm answering this like a rabbi. Any question you give me, I'll go on for a half hour. But there's a rabbi, I believe his name is the Chernovitzer Rebbe, and I read his Chassidus, and he said something to me that really he spoke to me through his text. He said that time is not like a stream that floats on and we never see that moment again. It's not even like a cycle that comes around again. He said time is a vessel that we fill with goodness. And so the meditation that I practice is I allow the moment to be filled and unfold in all of its perfection. And so that be here now, that that Ram Dass essence of presence, is also very, very ingrained in the Jewish meditation. He was one of the first great Jewish meditators.
Right. Sure.
So,
So, it's interesting because, I'm very interested in meditation, of course, have been for a long time. And the way I got into it was very unpleasant. I was practicing karate and they used to meditate before and after class, and I hated it. You'd be on your knees. There was no instruction. Just close your eyes. There was a Japanese command, and you're off to the races. And it was only years later that I realized that there was something else going on there. But in the mindfulness world, you're absolutely right. The mindfulness is kind of connects meditation with a sense of, we'll call it nothingness. It's not quite the right word. But when you look at some of the other true Buddhist groups or lineages, when you're able to see the pause in between the thoughts, and when you can actually have that pause of no thought for a period of time, you are actually able to touch something that's of a higher being. So, and of course, there's a whole esoteric side to Buddhism as well. But I remember, my mother, I had not spoken with my parents for many years. We're talking 30, 40 years ago. I don't have to get into details why, but I remember when my mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, that everything changed. I came home right away and I started to teach her how to meditate. And my father was still a practicing rabbi at the time. And, I had at that time become a Buddhist. And he was but he was old school. So he wasn't a meditator. He wasn't, kind of like your parents were, which was much more open to new things. And when he saw the change in my mother's state of mind by a very simple meditation, no visualizations, that's just, music or that kind of breathing, and how it put her at peace, he immediately had a very different sense of, oh, this is what the East can bring us. So that was part one. Part two is my mother used to tell me, my meditation is going to shul and praying. And I have great respect for that because I now have better understanding, growing up in an Orthodox environment, it was all about kavanah, which I think the best way you could translate intention, would you call, or is that the right? Okay. And in Buddhist in any meditation, not Buddha, it could be Hindu, Sufi, whatever, it's also about intention, because I could close my eyes and I could still be thinking about the date last night and the food, and I'm going to be late, da, 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 da. And yeah, that's meditation kind of, but it's all about intention. And in that regard, I think, there's a tremendous number of similarities between, I think, Judaism and Buddhism in terms of meditation. Kind of brings me to my next question, which is the Judaism you practice is renewal Judaism. Can you describe for us what that means? Because most people know, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, and renewal. It's not new in a sense. It's been around quite some time, but may not be as well known for people that are watching.
Sure. I just want to add something to what you said. I read it online. I forgot what it was, but they said that Jewish meditation is waiting for someone to finish their sentence.
Okay. Yeah.
I love that right there. That for me, that was beautiful. Yeah. So your question about renewal Judaism. So and the thing about renewal shuls and renewal communities is that if you've been to one renewal community, you've been to one renewal community. There's so there's no real there's a great level of autonomy and spiritual freedom, and yet it's hard to explain as a movement, what you can expect from a service at any renewal shul, which I kind of like. Some are more traditional, some are less traditional, some are more music driven, some are more Hasidic driven, some are neo-Hasidic. It all depends on where you go. But the origin of renewal Yiddishkeit is really quite something. Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi, of blessed memory, is really the founder. He's credited as the founder of the renewal movement. So if you want to know a little more about renewal Judaism, Google him, and Reb Shlomo Carlebach, of blessed memory,
Of
I'm
course.
sure you know, right? A great musician and composer and a very learned rabbi. The two of them were shluchim. They were rabbis for the Chabad movement under the Frediger Rebbe, under the Rebbe that was before Menachem Mendel Schneerson, blessed memory. And so they sort of they left. They were disenfranchised. I don't want to say they're disenfranchised. They left for whatever reason, Chabad. And Zalman went all around the spectrum of religiosity. So he was involved in, he wanted to experience every modality: Sufism, Native American, Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, all of it. And his mission, whether it was always that, whether his kavanah, right, was always to bring the ikar, the essence of it, back to Judaism, or not, I don't know, but he did. He would take everything that he learned and bring it all back to Judaism, which is why today, we were doing yoga classes and pranayama and breath work, 30, 40 years ago in this community. Yet it's because of what he did. It enabled a certain allowance of other modalities within the Jewish framework without diluting the Jewish framework, which is really something.
Yeah,
and then you have Shlomo Carlebach,
very open-minded.
very, very open-minded, and because it's neo-Hasidish, it comes from that open-minded, meditative aspect. The Baal Shem Tov, who was the father of Jewish mysticism, the Litvash, the Yekis, the Jews that were not Hasidish at that time, they would go by the Hasidic shul, right? And they would look inside and they would make fun of them. They say, "Look at these guys, they're sleeping in there," right? Because they were all meditating.
Right.
And so you have Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, of blessed memory, who then went back to his Hasidic roots, and the two of them, through their work, birthed the renewal movement as we understand it. And it's heavy on the Zalman side.
So we're super lucky that these guys were around and chose to open up and look around and see what else is there that they could possibly bring in without dilution, but if anything, with a great strengthening. I do want to go back to a moment though about, you talked about you were joking about Jewish meditation, waiting for someone to finish speaking. And now that I'm doing all these podcasts, even before that, I have a very strong interest in the act of listening, because first of all, it's really hard. Number two is I'm really not that good at it. But there's a whole.
Actually, you're doing great.
Well, yeah, I'm getting better. And I talk about this in another episode. One of my favorite organizations is called Compassionate Listening Project. They're up in Seattle, Washington. They train trainers and people to listen, to be able to listen. It's a whole skill, and paying attention and being in the moment, and you're talking facts, but at the same time, there's an energy coming from you. You're anxious, you're angry by a feeling, but I can't be doing that if I'm thinking about what else I'm going to say. And I can't be doing that if I'm thinking, I don't agree with what he's saying. I don't think that's right. I think it says that. You're not getting. So why is that of interest to me? For a few reasons. One is because when you can listen, you're really in the moment, which is, of course, of great interest to, I think, renewal Judaism, because you talk about direct experience. Very great interest to Zen Buddhism, direct experience. I can't be in the moment when I'm thinking and judging and all that other stuff. So, and it's not easy because I'm busy thinking about me, I, this is what I think, I'm judging you and blah, blah, blah. So, but I just want to share with you that that's a very strong interest of mine. And and these people from Compassionate Listening Project, they send trainers all over the world. This is the key point. I missed it, including Israel, including all these hotspots. And they take people from two sides of a conflict in the same room. So I will, if I'm Palestinian and you're Israeli, and they train them, and I go first and I'll tell you my story. My mother was killed. My brother was tortured. I've lived here. They took my land. They took my house. And then you have your story. The terrorists came and . And by the time the weekend is over, Everyone's in tears. Everyone recognizes that they're all the same. We're all the same family. They're all the same humanity. So, but they call it compassionate listening project, because if we're both talking or you're talking and I'm listening, but I'm really judging, then we're really not getting very far. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Mhm. Thank you. Do you mind if I comment about?
I love it. I would love it.
Do I hear another voice?
Yes, that's my production crew of my 4 dogs and my wife. So sorry about that.
Don't worry, my kids are coming home from
Okay,
school.
perfect. Great.
So, I learned what the Kripalu we used to call co-listening. And it taught me a couple of things. It taught me, firstly, how to be still, that it's one thing to meditate on the mat, and it's another to, as we said before, to let someone finish their sentence. And the two combine, or they come together in a practice that really lends itself to dialogue. And when we learn in our circles here in our community, we after someone speaks, we say shamanu, which means in Hebrew, you've
Right.
been heard, right?
Right.
And that's all. There's no crosstalk. We're not trying to fix someone. We're not, unless the person asks a question, no one's directing any. And can I tell you, it's so not Jewish. it's so refreshing, and it's becoming more and more Jewish. This instead of just the debate and the incessant chatter, it has become a real healing center, and so it actually inspired me to become a great proponent of dialogue. I read Daniel Yankovic's book on dialogue, and I took that into what I understand from our own scripture, and there are certain key elements that I glean from it. Number one is, in addition to listening, it's to approach a conversation without the need to impose your beliefs or your certainties. So the first thing that he recommends, and this is what I love, he says, in order to really come into a conversation, you have to overcome your certainty in general. That means even though you believe you're right, even though you have charts and diagrams, proving it, even though you're right there to show this person how wrong they are and how righteous you are, let all of that go. And there's two things. I remember a rabbi said to me, if you can let go of being right, then you become holy. And number two is that when you do this, we are there's a beautiful Jewish principle that when we come to the pearly gates of heaven, that the angels will ask us, Pil palta b'chachma, did you approach conversations with openness, or were you just there to assert your position? And that said it all for me. And then there are other techniques which we can talk about at a different time, but that was really an important part of my listening process, because you're right. The internal dialogue dictates what you're going to say. You've gone from listening to a rebut in a matter of 3 seconds, and you're hardly present. And I know the feeling because I'm there too. So yeah.
And in conversations like this, it's relatively easy. Where it gets hard is not only where I may truly and deeply disagree with someone, but where there's a huge emotional, access to it, like in these hotspots. Do I really want to listen to someone whose side has been trying to kill my family? Of course not. There's hate. So that kind of training and that kind of action is super impressive. I think I mentioned to you that I interviewed another rabbi, Rabbi Adam Kligfeld. I don't think it's posted it may be posted by the time this gets posted. That'll have been posted. And they do the same thing in his community in LA, by the way, because he told me on the podcast, which is when they're in a meeting, when someone finished speaking, they say something also in Hebrew which is really a sign of respect, I think, at the end of the day. So I have a quote here, happened to be on my desktop, by Rachel Naomi Riemann. Listening creates a holy silence. When you listen generously to people, they can hear truth in themselves, often for the first time. And in the silence of listening, you can know yourself in everyone. Eventually, you may be able to hear in everyone and beyond everyone the unseen God singing softly to itself and to you. So, it's ennobling to the person who is speaking. So if I'm doing a good job listening, you're actually lifted up. And if I'm doing a good job listening, I'm in the moment. So I'm also lifting myself up, transcending, and then, of course, the two together. So didn't mean to digress to that topic.
No, I love this topic. The Talmud says, whatever the Talmud has some sort of a 3-line or 3-word, uh, uh, phrasing for it. The Talmud says that a word is worth $1, but silence is worth 2.
That's great. Very good. That's my next Facebook post right there.
Come on, no, you have to go with the Jewish meditation is waiting for someone to sentence.
Right.
That's my favorite.
Right. So on a recent talk that you gave to I assume the community, because it's on your Facebook page, I believe it was for Passover, I found a few quotes that really hit home for me. So would love to get your take on them. And once again, there's things that you had said, which was just beautiful. The one who can change their mind is the one who can adapt with more growth. Do you remember saying that, or not really? Or, no?
Yes, it was just last week's sermon.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. So yes, I think I was speaking about, I like to take topics that are a little bit controversial, where someone is going to scratch their head and say, where's he going with this? So I talked about the strength of ambivalence, and the idea that ambivalence is generally not it's not compliment driven. When someone calls you ambivalent, it's not usually favorably. So I wanted to take that word and really reclaim its holiness. So what ambivalence, if you look it up in the Oxford Dictionary, and forgive me because this was like a couple of weeks ago that I did the sermon, but I believe it said that it is your ability to take two conflicting passions and entertain them simultaneously. So to have within you, and this is a very meditative, what's the word I'm looking for? Engagement. That to do this, you have to sit and allow for two. It's not indifferent. People think that ambivalence is indifferent or complacent is, I don't really care. No, it's that you care so much that you care this way and you care that way at the same time. And I think the country is so deeply divided that it's either or, and there's no welcoming of both. I think that if you have someone, and forgive me, I don't know what the politics are, this community, but like let's say you are a liberal and you have across the street from you, which is actually the case with me, someone who is a QAnon, part of that community, and to invite them to a conversation that's not heated or drive-by, not like, it's not a response. Responding is not conversing, but rather to invite them over to time where they're relaxed, where your daughter didn't just violate their Trump sign or whatever it is, but we'll get into that later. And so where you have a chance to see where someone else is motivated, because when you do that, it's not that you dilute position, right? It's rather that you are opening up to another truth. It's not your truth, but the possibility that there is another truth is solution oriented and simply the only way that we grow. If we believe that in some way we're going to wake up and suddenly everyone's going to agree with us, why isn't everyone as enlightened as I am? And they're all going to, come together and dance around in a circle. Perfect. Around their ideals, right?
Where's that?
Why has that not happened yet? So, we're waiting for that, when really it's more realistic to understand that if we could just be a little bit ambivalent, not to lose where we hold, but also not to stifle the motivations of someone else, because you never know why and how someone else is motivated. and not everyone is evil, just because they disagree with you. So that's where that was coming from, that quote.
Yeah, I know that, I deal with, as we both do, lots of people, and different people are different, and sometimes the folks, myself as well, we're judged. Oh, that's why he did that, or that's why she did that. And I've come to realize that I don't know what's in people's minds. No clue. Half the time, I don't even know what's in my mind. So for me to say, "Oh, that's why they did that," it's just kind of silly. It's kind of like shooting in the dark. Um, there's maybe you heard of this phrase: "Foolish consistency is the sign of a small mind."
Thoreau.
Oh, is it? Okay, you would know.
Yes.
You're better well read than I. And actually, if that's true, that I think the actual quote is "Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin."
Hobgoblin. Yeah. It was either Thoreau or what was his friend? Walden. Emerson. It was either Ralph Waldo Emerson or Henry David Thoreau.
Okay.
One of those two.
Okay. I'm going to give you full credit. And in Zen Buddhism, I'm not a Zen Buddhist, but in Zen Buddhism, they talk about beginner's mind. Not everything is what it appears to be. We can't always trust our untrained mind. We think we know. I know that's a fact. It's like, really, and so here's a quote that depicts this. If your mind is empty, it's always ready for anything. It's open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are very few. So what I've tried to do the last, 5, 10, 15, 20 years is just be able to say, I don't know. Yeah, that's a possibility. I don't know. If you put a gun to my head, I'd have to make a decision and say, yeah, no one's putting a gun to my head. So when it's time to make a determination, judgment, whatever, I just, it could be this, it could be that. I don't know. And that's not a wishy-washy thing. It's more what you said earlier, the ability to hold two different competing thoughts at the same time and be almost okay with it, as opposed to this is right and that's wrong. This is black and white. So that was a great quote. I'm going to give you another one. Same talk. I'm listening to this and I couldn't type fast enough because a lot of things that were coming from me were just like, got to ask about that one. Cognitive uncertainty is the beginning of limitless possibility. Sound familiar?
Yeah, that's what I think we spoke to before, is that when you allow yourself the privilege of being uncertain, then you're not imposing your truth on anything else. It's like the person who travels through Europe with a bottle of ketchup. It's like, what are they like? They're drowning everything in their own, opinion. It's like someone who opens the newspaper to get the old and not the news. And so that's I've tried really hard to be as open-minded as I possibly can. Many times I fail miserably, but I think the fact that we keep that in our, as you say, in our kavanah, in our kavanot, that it helps. It always helps. So yeah, there's a story. There's a story that is told about a man and a woman who were at the last stages of their marriage. They were just about to get a divorce, and they had been to counseling, and they had been to certainly friends, and they went everywhere to sort of bring themselves back to what they believed was their true marital love connection. And at some point, one of them had lost their job, and they had no place else to live. So even though their marriage was dissolving, they didn't want to leave each other because they still cared about each other.
Of course.
So because I think it was the husband who lost his job. He was at home a lot more than he used to be. And they sat down one morning after they had completely given up. They raised their hands in the air and they said, okay, you know what? This marriage isn't working and it's okay. We'll consciously uncouple, as they say today, right? We'll leave and we'll do so. And they started to enjoy breakfast together. And then they started to enjoy going to the movies together. And they started, because they had more time to do, what they couldn't do before. And after a couple of weeks where he was out of work and not looking for any work because he actually enjoyed being with his wife, he said, why are we doing this again? And they both said, I don't know. And from that place of I don't know, their marriage was rebirthed.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I heard that and then I typed it and thought about it, we live our lives thinking we're going to be here forever. Now, intellectually, we know that's not true. And then you just came back from a funeral, so that's not true because you can see it firsthand. Everything, though, seems solid. We're going to hold on to, we're going to grasp what we have, or our money, our job, who we think we are. We're holding on tight to my sense of who I think Mordy Levine is. And anything that knocks up against that can cause us a great deal of stress. You lose your health, you lose a job, the pandemic kicks in. Whenever something knocks up against my feeling of certainty, dealing with people who disagree with us, it creates a large amount of stress and a large amount of fear in our minds, which I think, it gets triggered. We're always trying to grasp and hold on to what's around us to keep it certain. And in Buddhism, there's this concept of impermanence. Some people think impermanence means everything's going to fall apart. That's not what it means. It means that everything's just changing. Everything's going to always change. And some people are fearful of that, myself included. But we can also find it quite empowering if we can learn to adapt to it easily. In your quote, cognitive uncertainty is the beginning of limitless possibility. Well, impermanence not only means things are changing, but it means everything's possible. The potential is great. So I really appreciated when you said that.
We say a bracha in the morning, and I'll say it with you now. We say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Thank you, God, for making me limitless and free. And that's the truth. It is it's a gift.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, third quote.
Really?
I come up with 25 quotes from that one sermon, but I only took the top three. To be able to live in an environment with competing ideas is not detrimental. It's not the worst thing in the world. So that's kind of what we were talking about. It's really a quote for today's day and age. I hope you enjoyed part one of our talk with Rabbi Marc Labowitz. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the It's Not What You Think podcast. That really helps us to continue to produce these episodes and invite other guests from around the world. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to hear any specific guests on the podcast, please share my email, mordylevine@gmail.com, or visit mordylevine.com. Remember, it's not what you think.